1950 was a kind of a red letter year because that was the year that on July 1, the work week went from 44 hours a week down to 40 hours a week, and so all kinds of jobs were opening up for me. And my dad was a laborer on the Great Northern Railroad, and he wanted my older brother and I to go into the train service on the railroad and become brakemen and then later conductors. And actually my brother did this, and he retired from the Great Northern Railroad.
Wow.
But I had this desire to go into medicine of some sort, and if you ask me why, I can't tell you, but all of my life I wanted to be in the medical field. And Miss Konechny, my high school English teacher, had told me about the College of Great Falls and about Columbus Hospital, which existed in those days. And her older brother was an X-ray technician, and that I could, she could probably get me into the X-ray technician school, and I would get free room and board and a little stipend. And since I had no money and my parents had no money, why, that really appealed to me. So she got me in it here, and so I came after working all summer putting in ties on the railroad. I came in August of 1950 to Columbus Hospital. I was raised a Lutheran, and I had never seen a Catholic nun in my whole life. And here I came down here, and there were nuns all over the place, and Sister Charles was my chief of the X-ray department, and I'd worked on the railroad with men, and I wasn't sure about my language, and the wrong word may come out of my mouth. So the first 2 or 3 months, all I said to Sister Charles was, "Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, okay, ma'am," because I just was. Well, I think she thought I was either a little retarded or maybe a bashful guy. But I got started in X-ray technology, and the college then was really part of the hospital almost, and so I went over to sign up for anatomy, which I had to have for X-ray technology. And when I walked out of there, I had anatomy, English, and history. And X-ray technology training is an on-the-job training sort of thing, and so I was supposed to be 40 hours a week doing that, and here I was signing up for a bunch of college stuff. But they let me have time off, especially for the times for the classes that pertain to X-ray, like anatomy. And it was me and 40 young ladies who were in nursing that was in this anatomy class. So I had to go to a lot of night school. So I did all that and went my first year, and I went year-round. And then after my freshman year, I married the lady who I was in love with all of my life. Mm-hmm. And she happened to be my high school English teacher, Miss Irene Konechny, a graduate of the College of Great Falls in 1947. She was 5.5 years older than me. We were married at St. Anne's Cathedral by Father Schuster on July 31, 1951. Irene couldn't find a teaching job here because they were full, so she worked at the Paris store in downtown Great Falls as a department head. And we got an apartment on 3rd Avenue North in the 1400 block, almost straight across the street from the bishop's quarters. I kept going, doing my X-ray and going to night school, and the sisters and the professors just bent over backwards for me. They did everything possible to make sure I could take the right subjects. For example, Mr. DiRocco, who was the head of chemistry, when I started taking chemistry classes, allowed me to go ahead and do my own do my lab work at night, and I was the only one in the lab, and I was trying to go through these assignments and knew about half of what I was supposed to do, but I was able to finish them and do okay, so that's the way it was. And so I graduated in 1953, and that was another big year for the Erie family because number one, I got my degree. Number 2, I had to look for a job. And number 3, my wife told me that we were going to have a baby. So we looked around and we thought about going to Phoenix, but we finally settled on the Deaconess Hospital where I became the chief x-ray technician in Billings, so we moved to Billings in June. And I'd been in Billings about 6 months, and one of the x-ray doctors, the radiologist, went on a sabbatical for 6 weeks. And so they brought in another radiologist from the University of Colorado to cover for him and do his work while he was gone. His name was Dr. Wurzbach. And Dr. Wurzbach talked me into thinking about going to medical school and becoming a physician because he thought I had the ability and the temperament to do that. So I went home and talked to my lovely wife about this, and she says, let's look at it. That's what she always said when I came home with an idea. Okay, we looked at it. And we couldn't afford the University of Colorado. Their out-of-state tuition was astronomical as far as we were concerned. So we dropped that. And we looked at the University of Washington, which was much better, and it was $750 a year for an out-of-state one the first year, and after that it was $400 a year, and now it's $60,000 a year for each year. So I applied, and to my utter amazement, I got accepted. So in the fall of 1954, we left Billings, and I left my x-ray job, and we moved to Seattle. On our way there, my wife tells me she's pregnant again. And we have a 9-month-old son, and I said, there's no way, Irene, we can do this. I think I better just look for a job, and I should forget about this. And she says, no, let's try it, for heaven's sake. So off we went to Seattle. We found low-cost housing in Seattle that had just been built. It was brand new. And our apartment was a block from King County Hospital, which was a big hospital in Seattle that took care of indigent people and welfare people. It's now called Harborview Medical Center. And so while I was going to medical school, my wife rolled our new baby up the hill and applied for a job at King County Hospital. She couldn't teach in Washington because she had to have Washington civics to teach there. So they said, well, they looked at her resume, you could be a social worker here, but you have to take a civil service exam because you're going to be working for the county. So she took the exam with about 40 other people, and I think she might have got the highest grade, but she got one of the highest grades, and so they hired her to start on July 1, and our second son was born during test week of my first year of medical school in May of 1955. So Irene worked at King County Hospital for 3 years in the emergency room as a social worker, and she loved that job. But so money did not become such a big problem for us because I got scholarships at the University of Washington too. Our biggest problem was we lived in a very rough area there, and our car in 4 years got stolen 4 times. And we wouldn't get it back until someone reported a parked car that had been there for a month or so, and so it would be a month or so, and so we were always without a car, it seemed like. And one time I got a call from the police, and they said, we found your stolen car in Vancouver, Washington. And I said, sir, you did not, because I drove my car a half hour ago. Well, we found a car with your license plate on it then, so I went out and my license plates were gone. So anyhow, I graduated from the University of Washington in 1958, and I was subject to the draft all of this time, as we were in those days, and so I owed the military 2 years of my life, and we decided to go ahead and intern and stuff in the military and get it over with. So I joined the Navy just before I graduated from medical school, and my first orders were to go to Great Lakes, Illinois, at the U.S. Naval Hospital there, and intern. And I did that for a year, and then I wanted to go to flight surgery school in Pensacola, so we did that for 8 months. And then I got orders to the Naval Air Station on Whidbey Island, 100 miles north of Seattle, where they had a big naval air station there. It's in a town called Oak Harbor, Washington, and truly 11,000 people of the 30,000 population are military related. They're either in the military or they're dependents. So I was there 2.5 years that I owed them, and I loved every minute of it. My wife loved Whidbey because she got to stay home with the kids, and we bought a house there even. And So I was going to become a radiologist, and I got all set up at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. But when I got out in December of '62, I would start in January. Well, in the fall of 1962, the Cuban crisis came along. And I don't know if you remember what that was, but Russia decided to build missile sites and put missiles in Cuba to point them at the United States. And President Kennedy put a blockade around the naval blockade around Cuba and Navy for a year, and I had to give up my residency. Then the crisis was over, and they let me out on time. So I had to go into general practice then, and I was looked all over the state. We wanted to come closer to to Montana, so we settled in Richland, Washington, in southeastern Washington, and I practiced medicine there for almost 30 years. And my wife was always helping me. She pretty much managed my office for me, which was great. We had 4 children, 3 of them boys, and our youngest was a daughter. And after she graduated from college at Pacific Lutheran University, she had an internship for a year at Seattle Center where the Space Needle was. And while there, she met a sailor from San Diego, and they hit it off. She ultimately got married and moved to San Diego. And a year or 2 later, she had a little boy named Patrick, and something happened to her after that. She became mentally ill and was finally diagnosed as having acute schizophrenia, which is an incurable mental illness. By the time they made the diagnosis, she was pregnant again. So her husband was going out to sea, so he decided to divorce her. So my wife flew down to San Diego, and with the concurrence of the parents, she went before a judge, and we became legal guardians of a 1.5-year-old boy and a not yet born, turned out to be a girl. My wife was 64 and I was 59, and so we brought Rebecca and little Patrick up to our house, and the baby was born, and I could see immediately that this was going to kill my wife if I didn't pitch in and do my share. So I gave my partner notice that I was going to retire early, and we had planned on moving to Whidbey, and we built our house in Whidbey, and we moved there, and we raised those 2 kids. Patrick is a chemical engineer, works for Intel in Portland, and Katie is a bone marrow transplant oncology nurse at the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, takes care of only leukemia patients from all over the world again. So we did a good job. As we continued to live on Whidbey, and 7 years ago my wife died. I'm going to be crying here. I had so much love and respect for her that I wanted to do something that would honor her, that would go on indefinitely. So I came up with the idea of an endowed scholarship in her name. I came over and talked to Gene McAllister, who was the president of the university, and ultimately they did that. And so I established the Irene Konechny Endowed Scholarship for students who are going into teaching. And I get letters from the students, and I'd love to come over here and meet them all every year. I did the same at the University of Washington. So, and these are for medical students from the state of Montana, and so I get to go meet those guys and gals every year also. So it's been a real joy for me. And the way the cost of going to college has gone up, students need to get scholarships as many as they can. And I think getting a scholarship is a tribute to the student, because it means that their academic ability is above average, and so it's a wonderful thing. I was trying to find out what it costs for the students to go to here at the University of Providence, Great Falls. But in medical school at the University of Washington, I know that the average medical student when he graduates from college now is over $200,000 in debt. So it's a good thing, and I'm proud of them doing that. Are there any questions?
Thank you.